week 3 of our workshop on choosing presence. This week we're dealing with chapter 3, Stillness. I wish you all early happy Halloween. That's a holiday, at least around here, that seems to start the day after Labor Day and goes until November 1st. So we're almost getting to the end of Halloween season. Maybe you celebrate with kids, grandkids, that sort of thing. So anyway, thank you for taking some time tonight to be with us. I'm in a pretty good mood. I just got back from a retreat in Illinois, sponsored by Illumina of Illinois, in which Belden Lane led about 35 men on a wilderness retreat. It was called Wilderness and the Awakening of Desire. And it was a cold weekend, but it was a wonderful weekend to spend time with our brothers here in Illumina and some time outdoors. And so that and the fact that my favorite football team, the Bengals, beat their nemesis, the 49ers, I'm feeling pretty good tonight. So it's really nice to be with you. And let me start out with, stillness is going to be our theme tonight. And I'm going to change my view here because we are recording to speaker view, and this might be helpful as we move forward. But this is the chapter, and I can't remember if this quote came up in our gathering last week or if it actually came up in our planning meeting. But Jim reiterated this last week, and it shows up on page 29 in chapter 3 in Stillness, and it goes, I can remember the spiritual teacher, Richard Rohr, telling us the reason most people don't meditate is because we don't like being alone with someone we don't like. So there's a risk to stillness. The risk to stillness is that it brings us into contact with someone or something that may be uncomfortable. We're uncomfortable with, but like we don't like her. That could be a really severe one. We really don't like that person, or we're just very not uncomfortable with what emerges for us in that stillness. And this weekend I heard Belden Lane, the revered weaver and teacher within Illumina, say that, the God of his childhood, he said when his childhood faith had taught him very much to love Jesus and to respect Jesus, but he feared God. And as a man of 80 years old, he was still afraid of the God of his childhood. And I think sometimes too, meditation brings us, we talk about the presence of God and the God of understanding coming nearer when we are able to be still and invite presence in. And that could be fearful for some of us as well. And so the opportunity obviously is to go into this stillness, challenge that fear, and hopefully by overcoming that fear, create a new relationship with ourselves, with God, even as we are better able to rediscover the present moment. So I have a poem to open with tonight. And the poem is by Shalon Harkin. And many of you know Shalon from our time at Awaken this year. She was the poet in residence for us. And many of you also fell in love with her as the guys there did. And she considers herself a mystical poet. She's very much influenced by Hafiz and Gibran. And she has a poem, I think, that speaks to our understanding of God that I would like to share with you. It's called The God Who Made the Octopus. If you think the eccentric God who made the octopus is going to judge you for your sins, I'm afraid you've missed the mark. If you think this wild God that spins galaxies as a pastime cares to get fussy about your mistakes or has ever made anything that wasn't born perfect and luminous, you might need to repent. If you can't yet admit how lovable and infinitely worthy the fullness of your human nature is, and if you think God wants to do anything but perpetually pour an abundance of love gifts upon you, well, my dear, your soul just might need to go to confession. Right. So, brothers, I want to remind you that we're in council here. You see we've lit a candle for our council. And at this time, I want to go ahead and invite 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 men to offer a dedication just more fully into council.
I'd like to make
Go ahead.
Go ahead,
No,
Jim.
go, please.
Briggsy, go ahead.
I'd like to make a dedication to the other than human world. I was out in our beautiful globe this week, paddling in some pristine water, and just really took reverence in what our Mother Earth has to offer us.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
I like to make a dedication to all the suffering that's happening, especially in the Middle East and Israel and the Gaza Strip. It's depressing. There's no other word for it. And I just pray that somehow everyone will start listening a little closer to what God has to say.
Here.
Yeah. I'd like to make a dedication. Can you hear me?
Yes, Clarence, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'd like to make a dedication. I want to send this out to our dear brother, Reverend Joel Blanc.
Correct.
I was able to get in touch with him, and the synchronicity of it was unbelievable. But he was in the hospital, he was going through some tests, and I was able to reach out to him and to pray with him. And nothing but the Holy Spirit timed that perfectly. So I want to dedicate this to the furthering of his healing, and the furthering of healing for all of us brothers. Here.
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 Well, I'll offer up a dedication to our brother Belden Lane, who he let us know that he's kind of retiring from his teaching life and his, more front and center involvement at Illumin this weekend with this retreat. Even though he will continue to be part of our community, he's going to take a little bit more of a backseat. So I wish him the best as he enters more contemplative phase of his life. And I know he's dear to me and to many of you as well for his weaving and teachings through the years. So I dedicate this counsel to Belden.
Here.
Well, thank you, brothers. And I want to invite all the intentions too, that there are dedications that were unspoken into our council circle here tonight. And you may recall that last week I called on 4 men to kind of introduce themselves, and I wanted to bring your voices into the circle as well. And we don't have infinite time, so that's why I'm doing it a few men at a time. So hopefully, again, tonight we can ask a couple guys to let us know, just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us, what your experience has been so far with the practice of presence and reading, choosing presence. So I am going to, let me start with Paul Riggsy. You're muted, Paul.
Thanks, Brian. I think gathering with men of like minds is always a pleasure. I think what this weekly gathering has certainly asked me, where I am in the practicing presence. For me, it comes down to honesty. I think for me, and this is a very intentional path that I've been taking with my wife and my children for the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years. And it comes from a lot of separation for years, where I was working in one place and they were living in another, and it was a mess. So I think that's what this weekly gathering and reading the book and thinking about presence and meditating for myself really brings me back to being honest with myself. And within that, I can find peace and I can find calm. Here.
Thank you, Rick.
Here.
Here.
How about Stephen Crisafulli? Did I say that right?
Crisafulli.
Crisafulli. Thank you.
All right. Yep, Stephen Crisafulli. I live in North Florida with my wife, Rose. We moved up here from the east coast of Florida about 5 years ago so that we could take care of our first grandson. So I'm living a dream there, doing that. As far as practicing presence goes, I guess I got on a track, a journey, a spiritual journey, just very recently, okay, a year and a half ago, I would say. And I have a morning practice that I've been doing that I'm able to get silent and quiet about. But what this workshop is doing for me is helping me to expand that throughout my day. So when I get, because I am plagued by feelings of regret and fears for the future, as Jim put in his book, I mean, they're impacting me. The more aware I become, how much they're impacting me. So this process that we're going through is really helping me carry some of that through just beyond my morning practice and into my day. I'm complete.
Thank you, brother.
Here.
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 Dave Tillman.
Good evening. Dave Tillman from Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota area. I've been practicing a transcendental meditation for many years, but this has really added a whole different layer to my meditation practice. And just meditation with the practice, which I do in the morning, and then the every hour with the app. It's just reminding me, kind of wakes me up every hour just to be in that presence that I have a sense and feeling and have for years of what it is. But this is just a wonderful reminder of that. And then just reading the books just to align with a lot of the thinking that Richard Rohr and others have shared with me. And thank you, Jim, for your work here. And just the awareness of how this is so beneficial, not only for me and for the men here, but just for so many others too. Just in the crazy world that we live in these days, the sense that there's some anxiety in me that I just reading the headlines and things going on in my personal life with my wife's cancer diagnosis that is unsettling. And so this is one way to settle myself back. So here.
Thank you, brother.
Here.
Here. Hear you.
Mark Waldman.
Hi, good evening, brothers. Mark Waldman from Chicago, Illinois. Good to be with you all. The caption under the title of the book, Release Fear, Anxiety, and Stress. When I read that actually a couple of weeks ago, I was one of the very last, I think, to get in on this weekly practice, and it struck me as a small business owner for the last 4 or 5 years. I've been so heavily focused and so narrow-minded about surviving COVID and keeping my business running. And now I'm at a point in my life where I'm so full of fear and anxiety about how I'm going to transition from this career I've had for almost 40 years to what's next. And the title caught me. I really had gotten away from pretty much everything other than a routine of exercise and work. I think my soul has been under attack for the last 4 or 5 years. So nothing makes you be more authentic, I think, than when you can sit and be with a group of men and listen. I really needed to sit still. As an engineer, I believe that my worthiness comes from doing. If I'm not doing, I'm not being productive, I'm not accomplishing. And boy, that just leads to a life of a real fast moving treadmill. So stillness is is not something I've practiced, and it's really been greatly helpful for me to just be here and listen. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm complete. Thank you.
Here.
Here.
Thank you so much, brothers. We appreciate you sharing with us. And for the rest of you that haven't shared yet, we're definitely going to bring your voices in as well. So please stick with us. But in the interest of time, we're going to keep moving forward here. The next step is here tonight is we're going to use the Practicing Presence app to do a meditation together.
We start each day with the practice of presence and bring in stillness. That is our foundation that we return to throughout the day. Practice this exercise in a quiet, comfortable place, if possible, either sitting on the floor or in a chair with your back straight. Aim to work up to 15 to 20 minutes. There are very specific reasons why we practice presence the way we do. Our experience is that it makes access to stillness easier and deeper. We put our hand over our heart because this helps release a calming hormone called oxytocin. We praise God because it humbles us. We are aware that we cannot change ourselves without experiencing God's Spirit within us. Our core intention is always to connect with our vibrant inner life, which is God's spiritual energy. Keep in mind that you may slowly say a sacred word, such as Yahweh or Jesus, on each in-breath, which makes it easier to actually take those long, slow breaths. To begin, sit quietly and put your hand over your heart. Praise God and ask Him what you would like Him to do for you inside. For example, Father, all goodness comes from you. Let your peace flow through me. Take a deep, slow breath in, breathing deeply through your nose. Follow the breath as it fills your lungs up with air. Expand your chest until you cannot take in any more air. Release the breath slowly out through your nose until all the air is expended. The out breath should be longer than the in breath. On the slow out breath, you should soon start to feel stillness and get a taste of your vibrant inner life. It is when you start to become aware of it on some level. Focus on the breath with each slow intake and each slow outtake. Focusing on the breath is essential in the practice of presence. When we are consciously focusing on our breath, we cannot think at the same time. When we are consciously present, there are no worries, anxieties, or stress, no lack of self-esteem, because none of that exists in this present moment. It only happens in our unobserved mind, when we are unconsciously living through memory or anticipation. It is important to continue taking 3 deep conscious breaths once an hour or more throughout the day. This is how the practice of presence teaches us, through the stillness we create and what we experience inside. That vibrant inner life is God's Spirit within us, our inner intelligence. When we start the day this way, it becomes our foundation. We know exactly what we're looking for then and throughout the day. This is the first part of inner conditioning, which is essential. That is what renews us throughout the day. You have completed the morning practice. Now continue taking 3 conscious breaths or more every hour.
Hopefully that pause to practice presence for about 10 minutes just brought you a little deeper into this space here, into council together. I think now what I'd like to do is to mention one of the questions that came to us during the week. We received a message from Mike Rome. And actually, I just want to first say we love getting your questions. So if you have any questions at all while you're reading, choosing presence, or practicing presence, please do send them to us. If you send it to answers@choosingpresence.org, that email will come to all 4 of us facilitators, myself, Chester, Mark, and Jim, and we will get back to you. And sometimes we like to bring those questions into the circle too. And since we have Jim here tonight, I wanted to bring Mike's question. And Mike's question, a really good one, especially for me. I have a hard time following instructions, and a lot of time I don't ask these kind of questions, but this is a good one. We need to choose to be present with the right intention. What is the right intention? So Jim, what is the right intention with which to practice presence?
Well, always the intention is to connect with God's spiritual energy through stillness with intention. And what it basically means is that intention, what we do through stillness, is put our trust in God instead of our insecure and fear-filled ego. And when we have the right intention, when we breathe with the right intention, it gives us the courage, the power to face our demons, to rely on God's spiritual energy to take us through. So when we talk about a clear before and after, it's not going to happen unless it comes through stillness with the right intention. And the intention always is to connect with God's spiritual energy.
I've often heard you say too is part of that intention is to go in and with the intention of finding that clear before and after.
Yes.
Yes.
That's essential.
Yeah.
And I think I give you an example. It took me, even though I was having a clear before, and I'm going back 25 years, 24 years, even though I was having a clear before and after, it took me months to believe it was happening over and over again for one simple reason. When I started 20-something years ago, no one was talking about intention. No one was talking about a clear before and after. It was like, if there's us meditating, and then there's all the holy people, which we could never be. Mm-hmm. And that's how I felt. And then as I became more authentic, and by the way, the more authentic part of me, I didn't do. It was done to me. As I became more in reality, I realized, holy mackerel, this is for everybody, each of us equally. And it can happen every day of our lives and throughout the day of our lives if we put our trust in God. But that has to come through stillness with the right intention.
Thank you, Jim. And I would just add, brothers, from working with Jim and being part of these circles and even listening to some other teachers and even some researchers that seem to be finding a great connection between the mind and the body. In fact, they're saying now that there's not much difference between the two. But meditation brings about mindfulness. And then I'm not so sure that once you are more mindful, you don't bring that back to meditation. And so it might be helpful, at least it is for me, to think of intention too as sort of a mindfulness with which I enter the practice. So I offer that to the circle as well, if that's helpful. So thank you very much for the question, Mike. And again, if anybody does have any questions, please, by all means, bring them to us, answers@choosingpresence.org. So now Chester and Jim are going to have a little bit of a conversation to help summarize chapter 3. Oh, Chester, you're muted.
There we go. Hey, Jim, in your book, you write that Eckhart Tolle tells us that you're never more essentially more deeply yourself than when you are still. How do you define stillness?
Well, first of all, stillness is the gateway to spirit. And spirit allows us to do what we cannot do on our own. And stillness frees us from what feeds our inner negativity. That's the power, the miracle of it. And as I tell people, we start to get it when we realize we're not doing it. Then we have confidence that it's going to happen consistently. When we realize it's God's spiritual energy that is doing it, that clear before and after as we grow in presence. And I think the biggest mistake I have made in the past, I've been doing it for 40 years, trying to practice a spiritual journey for 40 years, was that, as Thomas Merton said, the most common dead end to prayer, to contemplation, is stopping too soon. Meaning, God never leaves the present moment. We leave the present moment. And as we do the practices consistently, again, not intermittently gives us relief. Doing it consistently, and that doesn't mean it has to be perfect, is a cure, because our inner knowing, our inner spiritual confidence changes as we experience what's happening inside of us, as we become still for a period of time. And that's the gift. And stillness through breath with intention leads to union. And that's what we're all looking for. And it's the thing that initially we think is too good to be true, but it's absolutely true, because we're not doing it. It's being done to us through stillness with intention.
Yeah, Jim, I know for me, I'm guilty of having to be productive all the time. That's how I live my life. That's how I was successful, right? I know Mark mentioned that earlier as well. I could really relate to that. What are some of the other obstacles, to men achieving stillness?
There are many obstacles, but all the obstacles come down to one thing. We're physically here, and our mind is somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Too often, we try to make some other moment more important than this moment. And we just get lost in our thoughts. And unfortunately, 80% of those thoughts are negative. So if you took all the circumstances, I'll give it all the circumstances in our life, and just what you're talking about, I had the same problem, okay? And I would still have the same problem if I didn't practice presence consistently every day. And it comes down to, when we say putting our trust in God, let's say every hour, okay, we get that little reminder, okay? When we actually stop, okay, and just take those 3 conscious breaths or more, And it's almost like it's a new beginning, a renewal, a refreshing. We're refreshed. It's a reset. And it's amazing. Sometimes I'm in the middle of something and I take my 3 breaths. Well, all of a sudden it goes into, I'm breathing for 10 minutes because I feel so connected, so vibrantly alive inside that I really don't want to stop. Okay. So when I say the practice becomes effortless, it has to become effortless because every time we actually do it, it's like a new beginning. It's a reset.
I think you answered this already, but a big takeaway for me in reading the book, and it really was, I've been practicing contemplative or centering prayer for many years, right? But do that in the morning and then I get on with my day. And that's what I think a lot of us here have done, right? And you talk about practicing stillness throughout the day. Is there any additional thoughts that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I can't tell you how crucial, how absolutely essential practicing it throughout the day. It's equally as important as our morning practice for this reason. Our morning practice sets the tone for the day. When we do the morning practice, we know exactly what we're looking for. Now, when we do the hourly practice, okay, what happens to us is that we will not accept, or we will not accept the same motives we used to have before, because we know those same motives just drives us into a state of unconsciousness, just obsessing about something that did happen or obsessing about something that might happen, or we become, our self-esteem just gets diminished. When we take, and again, it's like I tell people, by 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm already doing 50, 60, maybe 100 breaths. I don't know. Because that's how I love to start my day, with a sense of connection with my vibrant inner life. It's not an effort. And throughout the day, the same thing. It's the hourly reminder comes up, but 90% of the time, I've already been breathing by the time it comes up. And it's an effortless practice that has so much power in it. Because what it does to us throughout the day, it humbles us. It makes us realize, I can't do this on my own. It's impossible. But when I do it, I have this power that's working through me. Okay? And it's beyond me, but it's also part of me. That's the power. And I can say with a lot of confidence, every man tonight, by the end of this class in December, the words I'm saying now, you will know exactly what I mean, because the experience is exactly the same for anyone who puts his trust in God through stillness with intention.
Thank you.
There are no special people. We're all special in God's eyes. We're all special in how God distributes his spiritual energy. What we have to do is make the choice to say yes.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Chester. Now Mark is going to share with us the making meaning of the message from the end of the chapter 3. And I think he's going to add a little bit too about one of his daily meditations that's kind of come up today.
Making meaning of the message. Stillness is the foundation of the practice of presence. God tells us in Psalm 46, verse 10, to be still and know that I am God. When we read it, it should become clear to us that it is not a suggestion. Rather, it's a command. Therefore, stillness is our foundation. Without it, we will not experience God's Spirit within us. We will not know Him in an intimate way. And that is the heart and the soul of the practice of presence. The practice teaches us through stillness. It's only when we become still inside that we connect with our vibrant inner life, which is our inner intelligence, and it comes from God's Spirit within us. That is what we're looking for. We cannot experience the peace of the present moment without some level of stillness inside. That is what builds our inner confidence and our foundation. When we're dealing without any distress, or with any distress, no matter what it is, our first response should be to bring in stillness. By bringing in stillness, we get a true perspective of our life now, because the screen of our ego is not distorting reality. The practice of presence lets us know that we're not alone and isolated, and that the only way we do feel alone and isolated is when we are unconscious, living through memory or anticipation in a compulsively negative thinking state. Yeah, I just wanted to share something that was just synchronous. My wife and I and the extended family, we all read a daily meditation from Jesus Calling, and just a couple of sentences just hit me here, so I'm just going to share those with you. Quietness is the classroom where you learn to hear my voice. Beginners need a quiet place in order to still their minds.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And brothers, one of the study aids that we recommend is if you've read the chapter a couple times, and you may have read ahead and read some other things, but if you'd like, and you can always come back to the making meaning of the message and spend some time with that as part of your daily practice, and even maybe even incorporate that into your journal to write about your experience of stillness. So that's an option as well. Chester, can I ask you to share? We're about to do breakout councils now. And so I'm going to ask Chester to remind us of the 4 intentions of counsel.
Yeah. Okay. As I reminded you, every week, number 1 during counsel, listen from the heart, right? And as I'm saying that, be present, during counsel, listen from the heart, speak from the heart, and it's okay. Silence is okay. If people are going around, the discussion and you don't have anything to say, that's okay. That's okay. You have nothing to say. If you go around and something else comes to mind, feel free to chime in. You don't have to just speak one time. It's pretty free form. Be spontaneous and authentic. And I mentioned before, don't, just speak what comes from the heart. Don't predetermine what you're going to say. Just speak what you're feeling, and I know you're all feeling it here after a couple of weeks. You become really open, and you are speaking from the heart and listening from the heart. And of course, be lean of expression. Sometimes, as I mentioned, some people get pretty boisterous or speak for a long time, and just be cognizant of the fact that we're probably going to have about 45 minutes, maybe a little bit less than that, and we've got 3 or 4 questions. Just be, cognizant of that. And you may not get through all the questions. I know in our group, you end up getting into some really deep discussion, and that's okay if you didn't get to all the questions. I mean, the most important part is to have heart-to-heart discussions with the people that you're in the group with.
Well, great. Thank you, Chester. That's really helpful. All right. Welcome back, brothers. Hope you had a wonderful council. I believe we had an excellent council here this evening. And thank you for your time. I think before we adjourn our council, I'm going to ask Mark to share with us again in this chapter, you noticed that Jim quoted Paula D'Arcy's "Guaranteed Ways to Miss God, the Hidden God," and it's from her book "The Sacred Threshold." And I really like these. I imagine you might have too. But I figured that we should read those one more time, and we can use those throughout the day as tools of mindfulness to come back to the present moment. So, Mark, if you can unmute yourself and share those with us.
Can I do it with a smile?
Please.
Live your life at high speed, no exceptions. Run hard. Stay tethered and just distracted. The more clutter and activity, the better. Take everything personally. Never evaluate. Agree. Use blame quite liberally. It's so invigorating. I wasn't responsible. You were. Everything's your fault. Don't laugh, though, especially at yourself. Stay tied to that past. Elevate it to greatness. Live remembering and longing or missing. Why do it halfway? Go for it. Use the word because. I can't change because. Because is so little appreciated as a solvent for responsibility. Try using because that'll work. Never question or think for yourself. Just keep moving and accepting, and refer back to 1 and 3. Continue to think of God as invisible and just hopelessly distant. Surely not in this room, at this moment, not while I'm reading this book. Reinforce the belief that your life is going to happen soon. This is not it. Not yet, but one day, maybe when I finish reading.
Thank you, Mark. Those are great to refer to. I'll post those on our website as well so that you can find them and refer to them easily. And so again, we're going to start our process of closing out now. And next week, we're going to dive into chapter 4, accessing presence. And shortly tomorrow, I promise to have the study questions, the journaling questions on our website for you to download the PDF and to incorporate those into your weekly practice. And as soon as possible, I'll get the video up from tonight and some of the resources, the poem and other things that we've shared here this evening with you. Give me at least till Thursday. I might get it done Wednesday, but this week is coinciding with the end of the month, which is usually a busy time for me. So I appreciate that. I want to invite Jim to offer any thoughts that he might have this evening or this concluding thoughts.
Yeah, I'd like to relate a story to you that I think talks about the power of stillness. Myself, my wife, and 2 other couples were out to dinner. And me and my wife, I was explaining, we had just not come back, but maybe 6 months earlier, we had come back from Lourdes in France. And I was talking about what a deep spiritual experience it was for me and my wife. And which obviously I'm talking about a clear before and after. So my friend kept asking me, well, Jim, what do you mean by a deep spiritual experience? What is it like? I mean, how did you feel? What is it like? I says, let me ask you a question. My friend has, at the time he had 2, he still does, but 2 small grandchildren, like maybe 1.5 years, 2 years old. I says, do me a favor. What does it feel like when you're holding one of your grandchildren in your arm? Okay. And everything, all of a sudden, you realize nothing is more important to this. Everything about this is how things should be every single moment of every single day. I says, how did that feel? And he says to me, well, it felt like heaven. I says, well, let me tell you something. Your grandchild had didn't make that happen. Holding your grandchild allowed you to become more still. And in that stillness, God's spiritual energy entered you. That unconditional love that you experienced through the child was through stillness, not the child. The child just made it easier for you to become still. And that's available to us every day.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jim. That's a wonderful story and way to express what that's like and how we connect with stillness. So thank you. Brothers, I hope you're using the Practice of Presence app and are finding that useful to help guide you through your morning practice and actually give you daily or hourly reminders throughout your waking day. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, you can reach out to us with questions anytime as you're reading the book or something comes up. Or if you just want to share something about your practice of presence, please do that at answers@choosingpresence.org. And also, stick around afterwards if you have any questions. Jim and Chester, Mark, and I will hang out for a few minutes if you want. But with that, we'll go ahead and you can extinguish your candles and we'll just give us a couple minutes for everybody to leave in silence. Thank you, brothers. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Peace.
Peace.
Peace.